Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast for Wednesday, May the 29th. I'm Zach Ewing with Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan. Hope you enjoyed the long weekend. Saints were back out at practice for their second week of organized team activities. Well, all week, but we saw them play practice yesterday. We're talking about practice today.
We're sitting in here. You're supposed to be the podcast host, and we're in here talking about practice.
That's right.
Not a game. Not a game.
Not the game that you play.
Talking about practice.
That's all we have to talk about this time of year. We are going to have good podcasts for you all summer long, leading into training camp, which starts actually, it's not even the last week of July. It's early this year. It's like July 24th or something like that.
Second to last week of July.
Season starts a little early this year. So we are 2/3 of the way through OTAs, and we're going to kind of give you some of our impressions. Full disclosure, I haven't been out at OTAs, but these three gentlemen have. So let's talk about what you have seen, what you have learned. First of all, subscribe to the channel. We do have some practice videos up from our man Norman Bell and get some interviews up later today as well. So check all of those out. The Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel. Like the videos. Include us in your podcast rotation. OTAs, guys, what has stuck out to you through 2 weeks of these? Obviously, not everybody's there. They're not showing us everything, but what has stuck out through two viewing sessions?
Well, number one, it's Matthew Paris's fashion sense.
Do tell.
Let's get this man. Can we use company funds to get this man a pair of
prescription
sunglasses?
I put the sunglasses over the glasses.
Do we have photos of this?
They're
we
bright green.
We're going to get a
blue too.
Saints on NOLA.com Instagram account.
I think it's great.
Hey,
I haven't given Matt any grief at all over this.
Yeah.
My wife does that sometimes, so I can't knock it.
Maybe instead of getting you like the prescription sunglasses, we can get you like the trucker ones, the ones that like really fit over the glasses.
Okay, yeah. The beer goggles from
Look like a bug.
Champagne.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's my number one takeaway is Matt looks incredibly cool out there.
I have to say it's a real surprise to see you pivot from Jeff Duncan fashion sense to Matthew Paris fashion sense.
Yeah, I'm an equal opportunity hater. I'll get to you later, Jeff.
Yeah.
Nice legs.
Yep. They are tan.
All right.
Jeff is wearing shorts
What
for
were
those
we
who are
talking
listening.
about? Before this gets too far off the rails, let's bring Luke back into it with Taysom Hill, his favorite top. No, we talked about that last week. We will talk a little Taysom. But in all seriousness, obviously the number one story here is the new offense, how they're going to break it in, how they're going to break it down, install it. I believe they say they're in phase 2 of their install right now. Jeff, what are your impressions of Saints offense?
Well,
new look.
Talking some time with Jake Haener yesterday, talking about this is the third time they've been through. This is the third install of the offense. So it's the third time, maybe because the quarterbacks, I think, got there early with the other rookies. So he said this is the fourth install of a 6-part install. They do 6 different installs, and this is the third time they've done it. So they'll have gone through 3 times the offense by the time they start training camp. So then they'll go through another 4th install. So this is the first time they've done it on the field, though.
Kind of sounds like a sprint. A sprint.
Yeah, it's a little like what we had a sprint, right? No, but he said something in particular that I thought was interesting. He said that last year during the practice scripts, the scripts they got, you could read from the offense. You also saw what the defensive script was. So he goes, we knew what the defense was going to be for every play. He said, and that helped me tremendously because I could formulate where I was going to go with the ball as I was going to the line of scrimmage. I knew what to expect. He goes, Klint Kubiak does not let us see the defense. And he thinks that is actually beneficial because he said last year when I got in the preseason games, I didn't know what the defense was going to be called. And he goes, I struggled. I had some times where I struggled to process. He said he thinks this is actually helping him learn, and he hasn't turned the ball over once so far. I think he's clearly been one of the stars of what we've seen so far. That you can see he knows the offense. He's in full command. He knows kind of when to attack, when to check down, when he's placing the ball in the right spot. And we talked about it on the podcast last week. I mean, I think this offense is kind of tailor-made for his skill set.
Yeah, hold that thought because we are going to get to Jake Haener.
I know, but I mean, he just
Yeah.
that's all of our eyes are on the offense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you watch the defense a little bit, but for the most part, we're all trying to learn and see this new scheme and how it's being implemented.
And I think one of the things that the consistent themes that when you're talking to players about Klint Kubiak is they all talk about his attention to detail and his focus on the small things. And you can see it at times, like you can see it when they don't break the huddle in a way that he likes. He gets them all back, makes them do it again. It's not quite at the level of with Sean Payton, where he's like literally walking guys out to exactly where he wants to be on their splits. But it is something that is clearly important to him is getting the very, very small, seemingly minor things right, so the grand scheme can all play out the way it's supposed to. I think the early impressions have been very positive. I think Derek Carr's looked really sharp in this offense, which is exactly what we were talking about when Klint Kubiak was hired. This is a scheme and a system. When you look just historically at what it's been in the NFL, it's one that maximizes quarterbacks. So I think the early returns have been very, very positive on Haener, on Carr, and I think you have to like what you see so far. And it's guys running in shirts and shorts and no contact, and I think offense is generally ahead of defense at this stage of the game, but it's good first impressions, I think.
Everybody's optimistic in the offseason, it seems like, especially when you look at offense. And I mean, I do think Derek Carr's looked good from what I've seen and from what everyone said, and that's obviously a positive thing. Let's spare a word for the defense, Matt, just because we're not going to talk a ton about them. I think outside of Marshawn Lattimore, who we've discussed kind of ad nauseum his situation, and it's normal for him to not be at OTAs, maybe a good sign to see all these veteran players there and participating, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Paulson Adebo wasn't there yesterday either.
He wasn't. But, you do have Tyrann Mathieu, Demario Davis, even Cam Jordan, who's rehabbing an injury. He's out there just watching and focusing on his rehab, but he's still out there. Like, Chase Young, he's not been at practice, but he's been rehabbing inside the building. Cam Jordan's taking a little bit of a different approach. His injury isn't, I don't think, as serious as Chase Young's was. But, this is a defense that really has their tone set by those guys, and I think it's important for them to kind of, be there, set a tone. I will say, like, of the defense, the depth is, because so many guys are out right now, like Brian Brzee, he's been dealing with a little bit of an injury, so he hasn't been in team drills, and it's like there's Kendall Vickers, who they signed 2 weeks ago, taking first team reps, and then your cornerbacks right now, because Paulson Adebo wasn't there, and they still have Alontae Taylor in the slot and Kool-Aid McKinstry's hurt. It's like Rajon Wright and
I think Taylor was on the outside during the base yesterday.
Yes, during the base. So sorry.
Yeah.
They play so much.
But guys you would not want to see
No.
out there week one against the Panthers.
And they won't be, so it's not like you don't have to overreact too much to it, but it's just it really stresses, I think, health, getting guys getting guys bought in, and that's kind of what this time of year is for.
That's I think kind of been the thing that has separated the last couple Saints teams from the teams before them is the 2021 or the 19 and 20 teams were they dealt with significant injuries throughout the season, but they were so deep. It's like what we talked about in the draft. Like those drafts, like they didn't really feel like they needed to hit on immediate contributors because they had people entrenched pretty much across the board. The too deep now is a lot less imposing than it used to be. So I don't think this is going to be a team that's going to be able to navigate injuries much the way it hasn't been able to in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, what you said is those guys won't be out there week one, but what if they have to be out there week 3 because you've had injuries?
And we found out yesterday that Tano Passanio, he tore his Achilles in the offseason, and he's going to be done, not for the season maybe, but at least for a significant chunk of it. So right now, defensive tackle is a little bit of a concern, but maybe they'll sort it out. I think Christian Boyd, their 6th-round rookies, looked pretty good. But yeah, that's a group that I think it's important for them to still develop a rhythm, even though this is a system that they all know. It's still important to kind of hone those reps early this year.
And look, this is the time of year also where you're just, I mean, you can't really evaluate the running game. You can't evaluate pass rush. I mean, there's no pads. They're not getting physical. I mean, there's rules against how physical they can even be. So it's really hard to judge any of that. I think what you're looking at is, confidence level. Are guys knowing where they're supposed to be? Is it sloppy? Is the offense having to be told, like Luke said, get back in the huddle, break it better? One of the things Haener talked about was just commanding the huddle and getting in and out. I mean, just things like that. That's what we're looking at. It's impossible to judge, how a linebacker's playing right now.
Yeah. I did find it interesting. Demario Davis spoke yesterday and said he had conversations with Klint Kubiak about defending that defense or defending that offense.
Yeah. I think it's a side benefit of bringing in this new scheme is that if you're seeing this kind of proliferating across the NFL, you have a better chance of defending it. I think if you're seeing it every day, and I think DeMario said that yesterday, just that this is beneficial for them if they're going to see this thing a couple times throughout the course of a year, to see it in practice and to not know exactly what the other team, what the offense is going to do on every single play. We were talking about the script earlier. I mean, they didn't really necessarily need a script on the defensive side of the ball, as they've been facing the same thing for their entire time here. So, I do think that part is going to be beneficial for them. We'll see how beneficial it actually is. I think the players are still more important than understanding how to run against something. But yeah, I think that part is, and you got players like DeMario and Tyron who get to go to Klint Kubiak and be like, okay, what does this mean? Like, how do we actually defend this? I think that can only be beneficial.
I think the coaches as well, that's something that Taysom was saying in his media availability scrum, is that Michael Hodges has gone up to Klint Kubiak to say, all right, when Taysom's in the game, like what kind of personnel packages are you guys running? So they're prepared for it. We heard in practice yesterday of coaches yelling, don't look at the script, don't look at the script. And then the defense still kind of reading, like when Taysom was out there, guys were yelling, like, watch the run, watch Taysom's run. But I thought what the cool thing about this offense is that the Hill, and I wrote about this yesterday, is that the Hill run wasn't the typical Hill run that we're used to seeing. It wasn't just, all right, he's quarterback for the play, he's going to run straight forward. He was in shotgun right next to Derek Carr to his left and then ran left. And so it was, they're just presenting new looks, and I think that's pretty important for this offense in general. Is just the more things you can do, the better they'll be.
That was a funny moment from practice yesterday, by the way, when Derek Carr was like yelling at the defense, like caught you looking at the script, and they like changed it up on him a little bit. I think he hit was it Equinemius St. Brown for a huge gain because like the defense was like thinking about something else and they hit him over the top. It was good.
It's a good place to transition. We're going to kind of look at three separate aspects of the offense and how it's looked in OTAs. Saints Insider Podcast, hit the like button. Like if you're watching the show, you like the show, right? Hit it right now. Just click it right now. Click it if you haven't already. We appreciate you. So the first one's Taysom. And Matt, you wrote about Taysom yesterday. In the past, he's been in the game, and obviously he's done different things. He's played a lot of tight end. He'll come in, and they'll sneak a pass in. But a lot of times when he comes in the game, it's going to be sort of that power run. I think we're going to see that toolbox opened up a little bit more this year, and I get the feeling that has Taysom engaged.
It does, and he said that him and Klint had a pretty frank conversation that was really positive about kind of, all right, what do you expect? What's going to be my role? And he said everything he's seen so far has delivered on that promise, basically. And I do think, we've talked so much about Kyle Juszczyk and the role of a fullback. We mentioned this on last week's show, but I don't expect Taysom Hill to play like 40 snaps at fullback. But if you can throw it and sprinkle it in every once in a while and keep the defense off guard, that'll be pretty crucial for them, I think. And I think the thing too is we saw that when Taysom's in at fullback, it's just not, all right, Taysom's in at fullback, it's going to be a pass. He was being the lead blocker. His hand was in the dirt. He was pushing forward, serving as the lead blocker for Jamal Williams. So I just think they've talked so much about disguise in this offense, and I think Taysom is pretty vital to that. Like, he's your ultimate disguise guy, but you've got to be creative in the ways you use him, because a lot of the times last year, especially when they were struggling in the red zone, it was, all right, how do we fix this? Let's just have more Taysom. But that became predictable in a sense.
Taysom's such a fun player. Luke, I say this every time that you're number one fan. The
That's the other
belt.
use of the bell, yeah.
We could really see something different.
I mean, I think so. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be drastically different. You know, I think that still, you know, he is what he is. He's kind of a multi-use player. But I think that it's not going to be okay. Taysom's in under center. It's more often than not going to be either a quarterback power or a read option. Taysom's out at tight end. You know, he's going to run a route. It's when you have like the versatile player and you're able to disguise and you're able to use him in a number of different ways instead of just like, you know, okay, our tendencies are when he's here, he's doing this. I think it can only open up the offense, not only for Taysom, but for everybody else. And I think that's one of the exciting things about this. He's going to have to stay healthy if his usage goes up. I think he's done a pretty remarkable job throughout his career, you know, as a guy who came in with a lot of injury problems of like staying healthy at the NFL level. But if they do give him 7-8 touches a game, which is, you know, kind of the sweet spot for him, like when you're hitting that number, the team is usually pretty successful. And he's got to stay healthy. I mean, I think he's going to turn 34 this year. But you know, like we keep saying, I think the early returns are really, really positive for that. I'm really excited to see what it looks like, just because, I mean, like you said, he is really, really fun. And there's a lot of different things he can do. And like, let's not forget, he's got like a 72% career completion rate. Like, he's not a bad passer either. I think that's something we're also going to continue to see in this offense.
Well, I think that's what I was going to say is we haven't seen that yet, really, him in practice throwing balls. But I think, and I'm just reading into what Taysom said, the frank conversation from Klint Kubiak, I'm surmising he said, your days of being a quarterback are kind of over here while I'm running this. This is what you're going to do. I think that's what he meant by frank. Because we all know Taysom has stated he still considers himself a quarterback. That's what he wants to be. But he's a team player and he's willing to play this role. But I think they cannot lose that his ability to pass option in the offense. I mean, that's one of the things they did successfully last year was every once in a while he'd pull it and throw deep and hit a big play. They did that often.
You almost wanted him to do it a little bit more.
Right. Yeah. So I think what DA was saying was the dirty work he's going to do is the lead blocking. That's what he's saying. Is you can't just have him in the game and always carry the ball. Every once in a while, you've got to keep the defense honest. He's got to be the lead blocker.
Yep. And that's the thing. If you decrease the amount of times he is throwing, then the surprise factor increases when you do it, right? And so that's one wrinkle where we talk about how is Klint Kubiak's offense going to look different than his father's has in the past, or than that 49ers looked under Kyle Shanahan last year. Taysom's a big part of that. Like, Taysom can change the things you can do and some of the wrinkles you can put in.
No doubt. And I think that's just playing to your personnel. I mean, if Kyle Shanahan had Taysom Hill, he'd probably be doing that with the 49ers.
Right.
You know, I mean, when you have a guy like that, you find ways to use him. That's what they're doing.
I do wonder as the year goes on whether Klint Kubiak will change the way he views Taysom or wanting to use him in different ways, like maybe going back to having him be more of a passer in certain situations, because I think there's a different perception of Taysom Hill, like outside the Saints versus people who follow the Saints or inside the Saints. Like, just personally speaking, before I took this job, I kind of viewed Taysom Hill as like, oh, he's a gadget player, but that's kind of weird. Why are they wasting these reps on him? And then you watch the games more closely and it's, oh, wow, he's really effective. And so that's kind of why they go to him so much. I just think there's a slightly, I'm not saying Klint Kubiak does this because he knows football way better than I do, but like there is, I think, it's kind of like the salary cap situation too, is there's a different sense nationally of how that's viewed versus how it's viewed locally. And I just think it takes some time to understand it once you're in it.
Hey, Matt, where were you watching those games from?
My couch. No, in Washington.
Just had to make sure we kept the streak alive.
Okay, I had a nice Washington-related conversation with Gleek Hudson yesterday. So
Okay. All right. Next thing I wanted to talk about was Jake Haener, and you brought it up, Dunk, before. He looks really sharp. And we're not talking about a quarterback controversy here. Derek Carr looks sharp, too. Derek Carr is the quarterback. But, I mean, I think all of us kind of expected a full-blown competition for QB2. And maybe we still get that when camp starts. But right now it looks like that's Haener's job to lose.
Well, I mean, I don't want to go. I mean, we're two weeks into OTAs. I mean, he should be ahead of Spencer Rattler. I mean, Spencer Rattler's just trying to figure out where the meeting rooms are and stuff. I mean, it's really not fair to evaluate him. And I think Haener, like we talked about before, he's one of these guys that has been counted out his whole life. And so I think he views this as a challenge. And he spent the whole offseason, a lot of his offseason with John Gruden. I think he senses the opportunity that's in front of him, and he's trying to take advantage of it. But I think we got a long way to go on that.
Yeah, I'm with Dunk on that. Look, he's clearly outperformed Spencer Rattler so far, but like Spencer Rattler's a 5th-round pick who's like less than a month into his professional career. I still think that's going to be a battle throughout training camp, but it is really encouraging to see Jake Haener take kind of a step forward from his rookie year. Yeah, I think we all were impressed by him last year, especially in the training camp practices. It didn't go as well in the preseason games, but he's a player. There's a reason they drafted him in the 4th round. I mean, he is a higher draft pick than Spencer Rattler was. So, I think you can see his strengths on display right now. I'm really intrigued to see if he can continue kind of moving that forward a little bit as training camp gets here, and see how Spencer Rattler progresses too, because obviously right now it's just a pretty steep learning curve for Rattler.
The other caveat too is that we've seen 2 practices, so you're only judging based on literally only a third of what's off organized team activities, and it's not nearly what the coaches see.
Right, and I don't put like the completions or the stat lines in my stories, but if you count up the notes, like we're really talking about like 8 practices or 8 passes between 7-on-7 and 11-on-11. Like we're judging less than 10. Like that's maybe a quarter.
It's an incredibly small sample size to make like big.
And he wasn't as. I mean, Jake Haener was still sharp, but he wasn't as sharp as that first week. I think the first week he came out really firing. Yesterday he had a little bit of. Just a few pass breakups, kind of near interceptions, not as bad as Rattler. But I do think generally this offense, we talk so much about fresh start with guys like Trevor Penning. I think this is a fresh start for Jake Haener because it was funny. He was talking about the offense last year and how even though he was learning it, there were things baked in from like 2009 that Drew Brees knew. And he was like, I was 9 years old then. Like, he was a little kid, and there was things in that offense that just were so baked in. But now everyone is learning this offense for the first time, and so I just think that he feels like he's not as behind the 8 ball in that sense. He doesn't have to try and catch up to, oh my God, my teammates know so much more than me. It's just everyone's learning it kind of at the same pace.
Yeah, Derek Carr was saying something similar last week, where it's just that is a good thing for the quarterbacks, because it not only are they all learning it at the same pace, but like it allows the quarterbacks to really take command of the thing. Whereas Derek Carr was learning from Alvin Kamara last year about the offense, and learning from the offensive line, and learning from the receiver group. So. Yeah, I think it's really this whole fresh start is an opportunity for them to make it their own, and I think we're seeing just good signs from that, from Derek, from Jake Haener, and we'll see it eventually out of Spencer Rattler, I'm sure.
So, given the caveat that this is an extremely small sample and it's 7-on-7, we're not really talking about full practice even. Read between the lines of some of the coach speak. Did the coaches feel like they have something in Haener? Are they comfortable if they had to go into the season with him as the primary backup?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I don't think he would be out there. I don't think they would have let Jameis Winston go, or they would have brought somebody else in if they felt like that was a possibility. They weren't going to be comfortable. And that goes on around the league. And I think it's also a byproduct of where they're at cap-wise. They had to cut corners somewhere, and so they probably felt like that's an area they couldn't afford to pay top dollar for a backup, so they go cheap, if you will, with a younger player. But I thought it was interesting. This is a little off the subject, but how much they talk about the footwork. That seems to be a real point of emphasis for Kubiak and Janoko, the new quarterbacks coach. Trust your feet. They got hats and T-shirts. That's a big mantra. And Haener talked about that. He said that he's kind of a quarterback that plays more like by feel than just being very regimented in his footwork. And he said that that's something he's having to learn in this system, is how much they're coaching his feet in the steps. And the time, it's all timing based. It's very similar to what Peyton and Carmichael did. I mean, the steps of your drop are timed to the length of the route. So when you're stepping on your back foot, ball should be coming out as the route's breaking. It's all NFL based timing. But he said it's the actual direction of your feet and how you're a ground based up passer is something that he said they've been harping on from day one.
Details, the small details. That's the sort of thing that Kubiak has been harping on. So I'm really interested, to see how that also plays out for the receiver group when we get a little bit better look at them and a little bit closer look at how they are functioning in this offense. But I don't know, man. I'm guardedly optimistic about it.
I mean, details seem like something that they were missing in Pete Carmichael's offense these last couple of years. There'd be penalties. There'd be routes run wrong. There'd be protection issues. I mean,
yeah. I mean, the story, the lasting image of the season is Derek Carr going like this, or Chris Olave going like this. They're on the wrong page.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll see. Obviously, they got to show it in games. It's like the caveat that we throw on every single thing that we're saying. But the early look at this has been, I think, a positive so far. Hasn't been a lot of stuff that's really concerning with this offense.
These are OTA takeaways. They're not season predictions or sweeping statements or anything like that. So having said that, we'll move into our last one, and that is going to kind of look at the offensive line, and we'll do this a lot during the offseason. Anything change for you guys? The order of the players did not change. You still had Trevor Penning at right tackle, Tali Fuanga at left tackle. You have your entrenched right guard and center, and then at left guard is sort of still that question mark. Did anything change impression-wise for you week 1 to week 2, Matt?
I felt like Nick Saldiveri got a little bit more reps at first team, trying him more there. I think he's
left guard.
Yeah. More of a realistic option there. I think that spot is still kind of open up for grabs. We're going to see Ali Udo again, so I think once he gets back into the mold, it'll be interesting to see where he slots in. I think Lucas Patrick was taking a few guard reps, and he was just with the backups yesterday. But we talk about that positional versatility. He was a center mostly last year, but a couple years ago he was a guard, and so it'll be I think when you look at guys who can make the roster, I think he's definitely one of them. Kind of filled that Max Garcia role that Garcia had last year. So I think overall this line is still coming together. There are still moments where, Trevor Penning had a false start yesterday, and then also another play where Michael Hodges, the linebackers coach, really got on him for what he felt like was too aggressive play this time of year. He said that he was tackling someone. I didn't necessarily see that, but he felt like it was too physical anyway. And so I do think it's going to come together, but really the line especially is a group where you need pads. I was watching Isaiah Foskey really closely yesterday, and there were some moments where he was getting around guys and stuff, but once the pads come on, is that still going to happen?
Yeah, it's a different game.
I got a chance to talk to Saldiveri yesterday. Dennis Allen kind of commended him for the way he kind of took care of his body this offseason. He had, I think, shoulder surgery in December last year, end of the year on IR. But he said getting that done early allowed him to rehab and be back on the field now. And he really kind of watched what he ate this offseason. He did a lot of hard training, and he got to the point where he's looking pretty fit for a 6'6", 315-pound offensive lineman. And he said it's actually the fact that he's kind of trimmed up is he thinks helped him in this scheme. Because it's all about kind of getting to your points and getting out in front of guys. and that kind of athletic ability and the ability to move is important in this. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he looks like when they're running this thing kind of full speed and seeing if he's legitimately somebody who can be a player in this offense, because we didn't get to see it last year. So like we've said before, it'd be like a really big deal for the Saints team if they could find a starting offensive lineman who's got 3 years left on a very cheap rookie deal. I mean, he's got to be making like max like $1.1 million a year this year, something like that. So yeah, I think that's got to be the hope. And then you can have Udo be your swing guy inside or outside. You've got Lucas Patrick who can swing at multiple positions inside. So we'll see how it plays out, though.
Jeff, do you think the Saints are still looking for offensive linemen in the free agent market?
I think they'll go through this period and then, do an autopsy on how things play out. And then if they feel like they need to bring somebody to camp, I think it's so uncertain right now. The DA's even talked about that. There's some position battles behind the starters that I think are going to be important. But it's pretty clear, even though it's difficult to judge the effectiveness of them, what you can see is how they're being asked to be employed. And you can see the movement in the offensive line and why they want athletic linemen. It goes back to the Shanahan, Kubiak days in Denver with Alex Gibbs. I mean, that's where this offense originated, the running game at least, under Alex Gibbs. And their linemen in Denver were all smaller and athletic. And that's what I think why we're seeing so many of these linemen rework their bodies, lose weight, because they know they need to get to the second level. It's all about cutting off pursuit angles, getting to spots, like Luke said, not as much just grinding away and overpowering people up front. And Benton seems very confident that they've got the offensive athleticism to do this in this offense.
Yeah.
John Benton, the offensive line coach.
And if you were to make a case for this group being maybe better than expected, I think it starts with they actually kind of have these athletic guys on the roster already that maybe they should have been in a wide zone scheme all along, because you had Cesar Ruiz who dropped weight, but we talk so much about like relative athletic scores on this show, and that's who the Saints are attracted to. But these guys are athletes. Trevor Penning is an athlete. Talis Fuanga, their first-round pick, is an athlete. Like, I just think they have a lot of guys who kind of already had the athleticism, and maybe they just weren't being asked to do that as much before. But now that you have a scheme change, maybe you can tap into it. And so I do think that's a plus what we've seen on the offensive line so far.
Saints there's a lot of risks, a lot of dice rolls based on where they are as a franchise that they had to take. And an aging defense, will it hold up? Can they put in a new scheme? I think the offensive line might be the biggest one. I mean, if this season goes south and in November, December, we look back, it may seem crazy that they ever tried to flip right tackle and left tackle and move Fuanga to left and Penning to right and think that it was going to work. But again, this is the time of year when you hope. And if it does work, maybe the whole thing can work.
Yeah, but big dice roll.
Yes.
Yeah, and as we've talked about on the show, I mean, like, offensive line is not the glamour position, and it's not what a lot of people think about or pay a lot of attention to. The fantasy football players now go on the offensive line, but like your entire offense, like its success is like hinging on those guys. It's why the Saints were so bad at times last year, because their offensive line play was terrible. Couldn't get the run game going, couldn't protect the quarterback. How are you supposed to do anything offensively with that? So it's imperative that they get these guys at the very least playing at a functional level, so they're guys on the outside and the guys with the ball in their hands who we know are capable can do their thing.
And defenses have gotten so good, I think, that you can just pick on a spot if there's one weak link. Like there was that Tampa-Kansas City Super Bowl from a few years ago where I think the Chiefs' right tackle at the time was just a complete mess.
Yep.
And they just went to it over and over and over. And so that's why we've got to find 5 guys, or at least 4, and a solid, minus. You can't be absolutely terrible. You can be like okay bad, but there's just, that's why, like, when we talk about a guy like Trevor Penning at right tackle, it's like, how's he gonna handle that switch. And,
Be okay bad. That's the goal.
well, it would be better than what he has been. Like,
No, it's true.
I really enjoyed talking to Trevor Penning the other day. He was very nice. He said that like he really needed kind of that reset after the season. He went to Iowa, that's where he's from, took some vacation time, and then he trained with Duke Manyweather, who's like this renowned offensive line kind of guru. He's a former offensive lineman in the NFL, and they were working 6 days a week with a bunch of other guys, and it really tried to, get him up to speed. And so he's going into this with a fresh start. I think he's taking the right approach. Just a matter of can he do it, and I think it's way too early to say whether he can or not.
All right, the Saints go back to OTAs next week, and the next time that we get to view practice would be Wednesday. We'll be back with you at least once before then, so we'll talk more about maybe what we anticipate. But real quick, what else do you want to see out of this offseason period before we get to camp? What's on your mind that you're wondering about?
It's a good question.
Or have we covered it all? I mean, again, we're talking about practice.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to see it in OTAs, but like I am interested to see once they get in for mini camp and it's mandatory participation. I want to see what Alvin Kamara looks like in this offense. I want to see if he's still got anything left in the tank. The last couple of years have not been good for him. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. His rushing yards over expectation last year, this advanced next-gen stats metric, he was one of the worst in the league. He's not breaking any tackles. It's been, I think, 3 years since he broke a run longer than 30 yards. Like, is he done? Or is this new offense going to bring out the player that we saw for the first 5 years of his career? I'm not sure. I'm really interested to see what he looks like in it and to see if there's more left in the tank, because I think we all saw it, what looked like it could be good last year, and then it just never came to be. So I am really anxious to see him once he actually gets in and see what he looks like, see if his body composition's different, if he's energized by being in this offense, because they are still talking about him as if he's a key core player for this offense.
I'd like to, having thought about it more, I'd like to see Spencer Rattler not throw an interception. I know we're I say that in jest, but and I know we've kind of treated it with kid gloves, but he's been bad, man.
What'd you text yesterday? Spencer rattled?
I did. And, I think there's a lot of, it's understandable why he's struggling the way he is. 5th round pick, coming into a new system, first time in the NFL. Like, I get all that.
But it's time to see some progression.
Yes. You want to see him at least make a little progress. And it's just, he's really late on some of these throws. Guys it seems like defenders are glued to the receivers, and that may be just who he's playing with. But a lot of his interceptions are the guy's there, the defender's there, the ball's tipped, and then it lands into another defender's hand. And it happens way too much, and you've got to cut that down a little bit.
Yeah, it's mainly because he's late. You're exactly right. He's taking too long to process, so the ball's coming out late, and the defenders are there. Yeah. I was sitting with Bobby Hebert watching practice. That's all he talked about. He goes, ball's got to be out way quicker than that. But again,
can you do it in Bobby's voice?
No, not right now. But I mean, he's also, that should be understandable. I mean, he's learning. So maybe that clock speeds up next year. But right now, he looks like a rookie, kind of overwhelmed.
You just asked me what I wanted to see blame Zach for, not me. Thanks.
Yeah,
he looks like the 150th pick in the draft right now.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll see where that goes. So that's going to do it for us today. It is Saints Insider for Wednesday, May the 29th. Be back with you soon, possibly as soon as Friday, and if not, definitely early next week. For Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan, Norman Bell, our producer, our thanks to you for tuning in. Hit the like button, subscribe button, share with your friends and other Saints fans around the country. See you next time.